Hey guys, it's the Merekat. So, confession time. Up until a few years ago, I really didn't know how to make rice without using a rice cooker. And this method was actually shown to me about a year ago now, and I'll use it pretty much whenever I go to cook rice. What's great about this is that although you have to watch the rice for the first, say, 5 to 10 minutes, after that you leave it alone for 12 minutes and you come back and your supper's basically done. You can put everything in the pot as long as it doesn't require a large amount of cooking, and it's an excellent way to get rid of leftovers. So what I'm going to be using tonight is some basmati rice. You can use any brand. This is the rice that works the best with this cooking method. Whenever I use other types of rice, I tend to get either a drier rice or a wet rice. You would just have to probably adjust the amount of water in the recipe, but I just haven't figured out exactly the adjustments. Some water or other liquid to cook the rice in. Totally use any type of stock or broth that you happen to have on hand. I'm just going to be using water for tonight. And then you need whatever you're going to put into the rice. Now what I do is I generally start with the protein or the item in my fridge that's going to go off the fastest to start as my building block. So for tonight we have some leftover snails I have from a few days ago. What's left of my garlic. Some green onions. And some non-salted butter. Now I'm using butter tonight because I want a rich texture from the rice. Again, you don't have to use butter at all. And also to get that flavor note that you would normally have from the snails. Now I've done this with pretty much anything in. You just want to mix your flavors based on your principal ingredient. Or you can also just make rice, put some garlic, some onion in it, just chop up the onion quite thin, and then crack an egg at the last moment to give you your protein. So I'm going to start by putting my rice straight into the pot. Now I always figure somewhere between 1/3 of a cup and 1/2 a cup of rice is required per person. Now because I forgot to have lunch today, I'm going to go for 1/2 a cup, and worst case scenario I'll have leftovers. Now that the rice is in the pot, I'm going to go ahead and wash it. So I'm just going to put some lukewarm water into it and rinse it down until the water is almost clear. Now when you're washing rice, you really have to go in and start mixing the water, and you'll see it will actually become cloudy quite quickly. Now what you're doing is you're removing the excess starch. If you didn't do this, you would actually get a very sticky rice, and we want to avoid that. So you're going to rinse it, depending on the brand, somewhere between 3 and 5 times. So you can see that my water is very, very cloudy here. So I'm going to skip ahead and just rinse my rice and show you what it looks like in a few seconds. Now that I've rinsed my rice, you can see that the water is actually quite clear that's on top. It's not going to be crystal clear. It'll be a little bit murky, as you see here. Now for the level of the water, what you want to do is you want to have about roughly 1 digit above. So let me try and hold this straight. So the water right now comes up to about here on my finger. And that's about where you want it. Now I'm going to cover this, put it on the stove, and get to chopping everything that goes in. At this point you're going to want to put in a pinch of salt as well. Make sure that you don't oversalt your rice at this stage. Also, if you're putting in any butter, you're going to want to do so now as well. As you'll see, I'm not actually putting in very much. So here's my butter. I'm using non-salted butter. That's actually too much. There we go. You're going to want about that much in. Now the reason that I'm putting those into the pan right away, before I cover it and put it on high, is because of the fact that I want them to incorporate in the rice as they cook. Everything else that I'm chopping up is going to be cooking on the top of the rice. with the exception of the garlic. The garlic will be going in as the rice heats up as well. I'm doing this because the garlic takes a little bit longer to cook, and I just want to make sure that I don't have any raw bits of garlic at the end. If you're using raw onions as well, I would throw them in at this stage just to make sure that they cook. Everything else, because the cook times are going to be so small, can cook while the rice is covered. Everything else I'm using can be put on the rice while it's down at a simmer, and I won't have to worry about it being raw. Now this has been on for about 3 minutes or so, and it's boiling nicely. Now you see here that it has the appearance almost of if you had put soap in it. That's because of the butter. So if you're not using butter, you won't get that at all. It'll just look like regular boiling water. Now we're going to let this actually boil itself down. If I was doing a vegetarian-based rice dish, I might consider putting in some dashi-style soybean paste, similar to the one that I used in the miso a few days ago. Now I'm not going to do that here because I find that miso gives it a rather dark and complex flavor, and because I'm dealing with snails in this case, it would overpower the flavor completely of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this boil down until the water level is actually just below the level of the rice. You're going to want to make sure that for this recipe you're using a good pot, because if a pot has been warped or buckled in the middle, it's going to make it very, very difficult to see when you reach the point that you need to cover this and reduce the heat. You're going to want to make sure to be stirring this pretty much constantly during this phase, or else if, like me, you have a pot that enjoys sticking a bit, you're going to have a nice layer of rice stuck to the bottom, which you really don't want that. Now when you see that your rice is starting to get down to the level that you want it to be at, you can go ahead and actually add any of the ingredients that's going to be cooking on the simmer time. So if you had anything that was pre-cooked, if you had anything that was very thinly sliced, you can go ahead and add it at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and add my snails and my green onions. Now you can see here, if I zoom in, that the water is actually starting to be just below the rice. So just stirring it here just to make sure that everything's nice. Unfortunately, because there was a bit of liquid left in the snails, I have to now boil it down a little bit farther. There we go. Let me just get rid of some of the steam here. Now you can see here that the water level is actually below the rice, so we're going to go ahead and cover this and set a timer for exactly 12 minutes. Bring that down to a simmer. And we'll see it in 12 minutes. Alright, so it's been 12 minutes. as you can see, all the rice is nice and cooked. Now, here we go. So now I'm just going to top this with a bit of soy sauce, and that's about it. Now, fun fact, most versions of soy sauce actually have wheat in it, but not No Name Selection brand. Now, hold on, now if I go to the correct side. So you can see here, there's no wheat ingredients. Now I say fun fact because the more expensive brand that is typically used in Asian restaurants does contain wheat. So I'm going to sprinkle a bit on, and I'm just going to go ahead and have this for supper. So that's how you make rice. I'll see you guys next time.